30 years ago, the first software for the World Wide Web was released into the public domain to create a global communications network. Within a few years, search and browsing services were built onto this software to give people tools to communicate, share, and explore information through a decentralized platform that was designed to be open and non-discriminatory. Vint Cerf, an internet pioneer and co-designer of the internet's early architecture, testified in 2006 on behalf of Google that the overarching principle of the open internet was that no central gatekeeper should exert control over the internet. As he noted, this open and competitive environment meant that entrepreneurs with new ideas for applications need not worry about getting permission for their inventions to reach end users. Over the following decades, the meteoric growth of our open and competitive internet revolutionized our lives, our work, our businesses, and our entire world. Millions of new good-paying jobs were created, and greater access to information promised a renewal of our democracy and social progress. This environment also fostered the growth and dynamism of 4 companies that will testify at today's hearing: Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. Each of these American companies have contributed immense technological breakthroughs and economic value to our country. They were started on shoestring budgets, in dorm rooms and garages, and are a testament to our core values as a country. But in an effort to promote and continue this new economy, Congress and antitrust enforcers allow these firms to regulate themselves with little oversight. As a result, the internet has become increasingly concentrated, less open, and growingly hostile to innovation and entrepreneurship. Megan Delrahim, the Associate Attorney General of the Antitrust Division, recently noted, and I quote, "There are only 1 or 2 significant players in important digital spaces, including internet search, social networks, mobile and desktop operating systems, and electronic book sales," end quote. Google controls nearly all of the search market in the United States, and over 90% of all internet searches are conducted via Google platforms. Amazon controls nearly half of all online commerce in the United States. Despite statements from the company that it only captures a small percentage of retail in the United States, the reality is that half of American families have an Amazon Prime account, up from only 35% just 3 years ago. And Amazon's closest competitor, eBay, controls less than 6% of the market for online commerce. Facebook controls over 58% of the U.S. social media market, and it has approximately 2.7 billion monthly active users across its platforms. Notwithstanding the growing popularity of TikTok, a Chinese video sharing app, Facebook captures over 80% of global social media revenue. And as Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes has recently observed, no major social networking company has been founded in the United States since the fall of 2011. And finally, Apple is under increasing scrutiny for abusing its role as both a player and a referee in the App Store through prices that may be higher than a competitive market would allow and policies that may favor Apple's own products and services. As the Supreme Court recently noted in Apple versus Pepper, regardless of price, and I quote, "Apple pockets a 30% commission on every app sale," end quote, in addition to developer membership fees and a 30% commission on in-app purchases. A former Apple executive who oversaw App Store approvals for 7 years has also described Apple as having, and I quote, "complete and unprecedented power over their customers' devices and using this power as a weapon against competitors," end quote. Although Apple has made a series of laudable commitments to protect consumers' privacy online, as the New York Times editorial board recently noted, its management of the App Store is, and I quote, "dangerously reminiscent of the anti-competitive behavior that triggered United States versus Microsoft, a landmark antitrust case that changed the landscape of the tech industry," end quote. Several reports by leading economists and competition experts also suggest that the dominance of these firms is unlikely to be challenged by new rivals due to certain features that characterize digital markets. As these reports have found, the combination of high network effects, high switching costs, and the self-reinforcing advantages of data can result in a winner-take-all market that shield dominant firms from competitive threats. At the same time, there's growing consensus among venture capitalists and startups that there's a kill zone around Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple that prevents new startups from entering the market with innovative products and services to challenge these incumbents. And in recent years, the number of technology startup financings has dropped significantly, from above 10,000 startup financings in 2015 to just above 6,000 in 2018, while the number of venture capital deals for investment beneath $1 million have also declined significantly. And even when tech startups escape the investment kill zone, they remain extremely reliant on these platforms in other ways. According to a recent report in Bloomberg, 17 out of 22 initial public offerings by significant technology companies such as Lyft and Pinterest cited online platforms as competitors or risks to their business. As this report noted, and I quote, "The tech giants have the power to change their services at any time, generating havoc downstream," end quote, on smaller firms. And while the explosion of the early internet connected local businesses to broader markets, there's growing concern that anti-competitive practices and the gatekeeper role of online platforms is now imperiling small business in our communities. As Stacy Mitchell of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance will testify today, and I quote from her written testimony, "Powerful online gatekeepers not only control market access, but also directly compete with the businesses that depend on them," end quote, undermining entrepreneurship and economic opportunity. As I've said before, this trend is not compatible with the open internet or its defining features that have allowed innovation and entrepreneurship to flourish. As Tim Wu will testify today, the United States is at risk of losing the best of our innovation culture and instead being a country of giant, lumbering concerns where incremental improvement is the norm and where innovators dream of being bought, not of building something of their own, end quote. Most importantly, for purposes of today's hearing, this trend is not the inevitable consequence of technological progress. It is the result of policy choices we are making as a country. Over the past decade, the largest technology firms have acquired over 436 companies, many of which were actual or potential competitors. For example, according to the New York Times report by Tim Wu and Stuart Thompson, of the 270 companies Google has acquired, 171 involved actual or potential competitors, and of Facebook's 92 total acquisitions, 46 involved actual or potential competitors. But not a single one of these acquisitions was challenged by antitrust enforcers. In fact, only a handful of these were closely scrutinized. And in the 2 decades since the Justice Department filed its landmark monopolization case against Microsoft, there's not been a single complaint filed by either agency alleging anti-competitive conduct in this market. Together, these enforcement decisions have created a de facto immunity for online platforms. I hope that today's hearing provides an opportunity for a serious and sober discussion about these trends and possible paths forward to addressing them. As Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, recently observed, unless we examine and address these trends, and I quote, "we can expect the next 20 years to be far less innovative from the last," end quote. In other words, this hearing isn't just about the companies before us today. It's about ensuring that we have the conditions for the next Google, the next Amazon, the next Facebook, and the next Apple to grow and prosper. With that in mind, I thank both of our panels of expert witnesses for appearing before us today, and I now recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin for his opening statement, Mr. Sensenbrenner.